Welcome back to Landman Now, podcasting the profession, brought to you by the American Association of Professional Landmen. I'm your host, Chad Smith, and in today's episode of our Landman TV series companion podcast, we'll be covering season 2, episodes 7 and 8 of Paramount's Landman and separate the fact from the fiction, highlighting the real work behind the drama. Joining the show today, we have Brent Broussard and Patrick Durman. Thank you guys both for joining the show today and taking the time to dissect the episode. If you don't mind, give your audience a little bit of background on yourselves. Brent, if you want to go first.
Yeah, sure. Brent Broussard, I'm president of Dudley Land Company, a 25 or so year landman. Kind of lose track after this many years, but yeah, Houston, Texas. We operate all over the country. Get to touch a little bit of everything in my line of work, which is great. Keeps it exciting and fun. And yeah, that's me.
Well, thank you. And Patrick?
Yeah, Patrick Durman, Dudley Land Company as well. I've been at Dudley for about 3 years now. Prior to that, I worked in-house throughout Dallas-Fort Worth area for Comstock Resources. Prior to that, Covey Park Energy. Worked primarily as a prospect manager through our alternative energies division. Handle some oil and gas projects as well as they come through, and where Brent and the team find it necessary that I take some things on. But yeah, graduated from Texas Tech, Reckham. Good season. Yeah, that's about it. So.
Well, good deal. Well, thanks again. Man, I was pulling for you guys in the college football
Me
playoff.
too. Big old
Yeah.
goose egg.
It's
That's why,
like
that's why we're just reloading. Reloading.
Yeah. Hey, that's how you got some good transfers. So
if
Yeah,
you're producing trillions of cubic feet of gas,
that's
you can
exactly
afford to buy some more football players.
that's
well,
exactly right.
there you go. So so breaking into the episode here again, we're covering episodes 7 and 8. And episode 7 starts with a little bit of a 20-year anniversary celebration for Boss. You know, they give him the Rolex and everything like that. And it kind of brings me to the question, you see him saying, "Hey, after this, I'm done. I'm retiring. This job's too dangerous." And then you have the opposite of that, where Dale's like, "Oh, well, I'm not retired. I'm addicted to this." But what does the typical work life cycle look like for a landman in that situation? Is that something that kind of just goes with the booms and the bust, or is it something that a lot of guys get into and then they stay in it and make a full career out of it? Kind of like, what's that work life cycle look like?
Yeah, I mean, I think Pat and I are probably a pretty good example of that. I got in when I was the kind of the youngest of the industry at the time, and there were a bunch of guys like me, at the time, and you go through bust and booms and bust, and we're on the field side now. Pat started his career in-house, but he's on the field now, and we're a little bit different because we're work with a brokerage company and we kind of scrape through and make it. But, a lot of independent field landmen get in and out of the business. So certainly relate to, the gentleman who got 20 years in. He's like, man, this, I've been grinding long enough and hard. And if you start young enough, you've got a whole nother career behind you or ahead of you after 20 years. And oftentimes, depending on what opportunities you have, where you live, if you're in Houston, Texas, and you go through a bus, there's opportunities you can maybe find and do a career change after 20 years. But man, if you're living in East Texas and an area you're a field landman and you're working there, you got to kind of grind it out. And we often see people get out of the business, on the field side during the down times. But if they're really good, you can claw them back when things get better. And it's a thrilling, it's a fun business. As a landman, some people just really like that the people element of it, where you're working with people. That's just the fun part. Not every job gives you the opportunity to do what a landman does, especially in the field where you're working with landowners, you're doing all that stuff. You're negotiating deals, B2B, company to company. It's an exciting thing at the company level. And some people just love that research, that digging into it. So, I'm on the old end of it now. I've been able to kind of scrape and claw and hold on. But, Pat, talk about what you got. You made a career change early
Yeah,
on in your career.
yeah. It was more. I talk a lot. I know Brent can attest to that. Anybody that can meet me, I want to be your friend. I'll get to know you in the first 5 minutes, and you'll get to know me and everything about me. But one of the big shifts, like I just wanted something different, and there's nothing wrong with being the in-house side of it, right? And Brent, beyond thankful that he gave me the opportunity, and really what it allowed me to do early in conversations when I wanted to come over to Dudley, and to the point in the question, 20 years in and the turnover and downturns happen. It's inevitable. It's really leveraging yourself and hedging your bets, right? And so Brent, early on, before he even started, he's like, "Man, go take your landman certificate through APL." So I did that, and not landman certificate, the renewable energy certificate. And so through doing that, had the opportunities internally really to take on some alternative energy projects with the boom prior to the big beautiful bill. Everybody using the tax incentives and credits behind it. I mean, we were just beyond busy with solar, wind, battery storage, but again, having that opportunity, I would even stress and press folks to say, hey, I mean, if you have a willingness to go and learn the other side, why not go and hedge your bet? Because there is going to be a downturn. We're actively in a downturn on the renewables end, but why not learn more? And so I think through that, the sustainability on the back end, whenever we do hit a downturn, how much do you know? And so, it's at the end of the day, it's a willingness just to increase your knowledge base. And how much do you want to know? How much can you go and do? And it's served me well. I mean, I know the oil and gas side of it, but having that in my back pocket as well has been great.
Yeah, yeah. Diversifying all the different areas you work in. I mean, keeps you kind of
Yeah,
recession
and
proof.
it's interesting. It's the same practices and principles. Land work is land work. So
Yeah. Landmen do land work. That's kind of
that's right.
our thing here. And that really just applies to any landman. Diversification of your skill. You see it all the time. We're kind of in that phase right now where a bunch of people, like our clients and people that we work with on the company side, they may have worked with a small company their whole career, 10, 15, 20 years. And now they got consolidations and mergers and they're working for, big corporate entities now, and their job is different. But you see a pretty distinct difference in mentality. It's like, oh God, I hate this. And others like, you know what? Hey, I'm a landman. I'm going to work. I'm going to figure it out. I'm going to deal with this situation. I'm going to adapt to it. You really have to do that in a business that's tied to commodities like ours. We can't
Right.
help if the price of oil is, 45 or $50, or if gas is at two. You have to adapt and you have to understand and gain a broad perspective of our industry so that you can survive. Um, so yeah, life cycles of a landman are a pretty interesting story. We really get a lot of opportunity to work with some really cool senior level landmen that, 25 and 30 years in. And man, just to hear their stories about how they made it through is very relatable to the episode. Some guys are just like, shit, I ground it out. And I'm tired of this. And other guys like, man, I just love it because it's always some new challenge and
Yeah.
we're chasing some new thing. And yeah, it's hard, but it can be exciting.
Yeah. No, I thought that was a interesting kind of perspective there between the two there. So hearing that, landman he kind of just depends on the person, I guess. I mean, it's with a lot of things, but so another thing, episode 7, it frames kind of the offshore exploration as high risk, low probability bet. I think they say like a 10% chance of success. So from a subsurface and commercial standpoint, what conditions would justify pursuing a project with odds that low?
How deep is your pockets, or how much
Right.
how much money can you get from the insurance company? No, it's I mean that is very much true. I mean, we're pretty accurate in the episode. Offshore drilling is an expensive venture. These are projects that are planned over, years, if not decades, right? To really get development going. And so the cost is in multiples, like multiples more expensive to go offshore. It's different land work from a landman's perspective. The gentleman who first told me what a landman was, I met him on vacation after, my freshman year in college on a beach. And he was like, what are you doing, kid? And I was like, well, I'm going to college and, I don't know what I'm really going to do. And this, that, and the other, I'm a business major. And I asked him what he was. He said, well, I'm an offshore landman. And I was like, well, what is that? And I just thought it was really cool and interesting. You're dealing with governments, you're dealing with, a lot of business to business type things, but they're more long-term relationships. It's not as laborious from the land perspective, but man, you're part of these projects and you're part of these efforts for a long, long time. And there are very few, offshore landmen in the business proportionate to, the onshore guys.
Right.
So, Yeah, it's a different game, very much expensive. They do a lot of work leading to drilling those wells. I'd probably say they probably feel better than 10% by the
Yeah.
time they spend 4, 5, 600 million on these projects. A lot of seismic, a lot of things like that. But um, we're starting to see more of that come back in the industry, Pat. I mean, you see, uh, see things in the press about, oh, new permits, new offshore projects.
Right.
That's kind of a cyclical thing as well in the industry. Offshore got a lot of bad press with the BP things over the years, and just the fact that the Permian Basin's right here. And the show really highlighted that with, man, it's more of a sure thing out here in the Permian
Right.
versus this riskier, higher, longer term development play in the Gulf. So
Yeah.
it's
Yeah,
it was relatable. I kind of understood that part of it.
the way he's trying to talk Cammy out of it and say, hey, we got these workover wells, we can just lean on that versus doing this kind of a, shot in the dark on this 10%
The
chance.
wildcatty, you don't want to be
Yeah.
wildcatting offshore.
Well, yeah, and the wildcatting another question I had about that offshore situation. I mean, it's very much wildcatting. And while obviously wildcatting is a huge part of the history of oil and gas, um, but in an increasingly data and AI driven world, how alive is wildcatting today? Like, how often are you seeing guys just be like, I got a gut feeling about this? I mean,
I think you have more gangbusters that are kind of running out there more so than folks that are actually going to develop it. In certain projects that I've worked where we're running big leasing plays out there, and whether there's partnerships tied to it, these groups that are actually going to go and drill and operate these wells, they know what they're getting into. They know the confidence level that they're going to be able to come in. They know what it looks like geologically underneath the surface, that the hit rate is going to exceed whatever that confidence percentage is there. You'll still see folks that come out there and, they're going to go and try to bust up a play. You'll go and run across when you're running top. You'll see a couple of new leases that come in. What are they ultimately doing? Either they're going to be carried or they're going to go and flip the lease to whoever's going to operate the thing. And so I'd say that's, excuse me, that's what you see more so in the wildcatting scenario at this point in time. Brent, you may see it differently, but I think everything's so proved up at this point, and through AI and the technological advances, maybe at some point in my career, my lifetime, we may see it. But at what point does the technology just exceed all that, and your confidence rate, it just continually increases over time? So
Yeah.
I think that's really
Shale
rad.
development changed the business from a wildcatting perspective, pretty significantly. Horizontal drilling, all those things. And like when I first started working at Dudley years ago, I would talk to Tom Dudley and those guys, and they would tell me about the days when, in the 90s, when they just all they did was shoot seismic. They did seismic projects all over the country, 3D seismic. But once that's shot, that picture is painted and it's there. It's available. So now as we learn things from drilling and shale and testing the fringes, we can see things and the industry learns things from that and then can apply that and look at 3D that's shot all over these major oil and gas producing basins and have a better feel for, man, hey, this behaves similar to something we saw here. Let's test that concept. That's not saying that every well is a guarantee, but a lot of times in shale development, you're going to hit something. It's a matter of, does it produce economically? I spent $15 million. Is this thing going to put out, sufficient enough to give me the return that I need to run a successful business, right? Um, and so you kind of see that. One thing also that you see a little more wildcatting as prices vary. They talked on the episode, what a MCF of gas is trading at. 372 MCF, $3.72 an MCF is one thing. When you get to six an MCF, it's a completely different thing from an economical standpoint. So we're kind of in that season where natural gas prices are a little bit higher in our industry. And so as landmen, we're starting to go back and work some of these areas that we worked in the early 2000s when natural gas was booming. 2000, everybody knows about 2007, 8, when, it was $10 an MCF and everybody was looking for gas anywhere they could find it. They know it's there. They know it's more plentiful and easier to hit, which I think they even referenced in the show as well in the episode. But it's, how economic is it going to be? How much does it cost? How deep do I have to drill? How much is it going to produce? And you're rolling the dice that gas will stay, or you can hedge at the right price
Mhm.
to have a productive program. And so you start seeing some of that wildcatting on the back end of these spikes right? Or leading up to these spikes in prices because people were going out and testing these new areas that maybe 20 years ago weren't. We didn't have the technology. It cost too much to do, but now we can do it because of everything that the Permian Basin has given us from a technical standpoint. So
Yeah. So the
it's you
technology.
see like bits and pieces of it. We're in a little bit of a wildcatting season. We're doing more leasing now at Dudley Land Company than we have in the last probably 6, 8, 9, 10 years.
Yeah.
Um, so that's indicative of kind of the attitude for the industry right now.
So in today's wildcatting, you have those technological kind of safeguards a little bit more than you had in the past.
A little bit. I mean, you're still drilling a mile lateral.
Yeah.
You're still drilling a horizontal well. You're still fracking it. So it's not like old school wildcatting where you could drill a straight hole for a few 3 or 4 million bucks, and see what you got. Now it's like I got to drill $3 or $4 million, then I got to go horizontal for 2 miles. So it's just a price poker. It's still a gamble. It is still wildcatting because it's 10 million bucks is a lot of money. 15
Yeah, and they're,
million
and they're
dollars
pressing
for
their
a wildcat.
limits. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're pressing your limits. I mean, we're drilling in some areas. And I've seen it come out within 2025, 3 mile laterals. I mean, you're still, what does that gamble look like? And I'm not an engineer, but you're testing a limit. I mean, not long ago, we weren't even, horizontal drilling was barely a thing. Then it was 1 mile, then it was 2 miles. Now it's 3 mile. I mean, how much further? I mean, how willing are you to test those limits with the cost that's associated? You look at some
Yeah.
of these wells, like Brent said, $15 million. Well, what does a 3 mile lateral cost? I mean, the more pipe that's in the ground, the more expensive your well gets. So the gamble increases with cost, but again, it's just that confidence level.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I like how both of you mentioned the gambling aspect whenever the show parallels that kind of with Angie going to the casino and putting it all on black and
$300,000.
put it right.
Man, I had to stop watching. I couldn't watch that. It's making me all nervous.
My hands are sweating. Yeah, she keeps letting it ride. I was like, I'm the kind of
That's
guy
damn,
I go in a
that's damn near
casino.
a landman payroll for us for a
Yeah,
little bit, man.
I
That's
go
a
in a
lot.
casino. I win $10. I'm like, ooh, let's leave while we're up.
Let's go. Let's go get
That's
the
right.
buffet.
I beat the casino.
Exactly. Well, Britt, you touched on the MCF, TCF part of that, and I wanted to dive into that a little bit. Charlie or Charles, he's
Don't call him
explained.
Charlie because that
Yeah,
means you're in a relationship.
That's right.
Charles. Charles is explaining to Rebecca that that the offshore field is successful, or if it's successful, they'll be measuring it in TCF rather than MCF. And she's, I don't know what that is. And he kind of explains it's trillions of cubic feet versus millions of cubic feet. But it got me questioning if that's something that's more prevalent in the offshore, or are you seeing those kinds of fields onshore as well?
Yeah, I mean, not being an offshore landman, the volume of production. I don't know if like a TCF is like a dramatization of what it could be out there, but traditionally, in general, landmen understand that these projects offshore, once they're developed, and you're talking about a field, you're talking about finding a Haynesville in the ocean. That's what I equate it to. It's the same concept. That the Haynesville Shale was at the bottom of an ocean, however many billions of years, millions of years ago. Same things happen in offshores, older, deeper, all those things. And so oftentimes when you have these discoveries, a production platform is producing from, miles and miles. It's producing a field. So I think if you equate it to that, it's probably pretty consistent. I don't know what the reserve uh, potential for the Haynesville is, but it's probably, I mean, there's companies that are producing a B, or more just from the Haynesville. But when you start combining 4, 5, 6 different companies doing that
Yeah.
over the life of the Haynesville Shale or any of these other prolific, the Marcellus, all those things, it's probably similar. But generally, you don't talk about TCS, in the land space. What's your well producing? What's the field capable of? And these mature fields are, companies very consistently are producing a BCF a day from their projects.
Another one that I don't know if this is, just for keeping things concise, but the show repeatedly uses that headline number of $400 million to represent what the offshore cost is going to be. But in reality, how would that cost be staged over time, and what kind of decisions would management have to make before committing to that full amount? Is this something where, you know, day one they're writing a check for $400 million, or is this an expense that's going to, break down over time and they're going to have time to pay it and everything like that? Because they're making it seem like, hey, 400 million is due today, you got it. But that seems a
Yeah.
little unrealistic to me. But
I think a lot of the hang up behind it, right, was, and y'all correct me if y'all interpreted it a different way, but the whole thing was the insurance payout, right? Monty's decision before his death, instead of taking that 400 million and doing what you're supposed to do with it, took that, he put it in overseas accounts, he reinvested it back into the workover play out in the Permian. I think that's really highlights the main mess up right there. I mean, he should have done like any reasonable person, an ethical person, he should have reinvested it back where the insurance policy was associated, being redoing the work or redoing the offshore well. Ultimately, coming to find out on the back end that it wasn't even necessarily the hurricane that wiped it out, which is why he was hiding it. So it was all fraud and scandal at the end of the day. But I think that's your main hiccup right there. Is, well, now we're trying to recoup the 400 million. Tell us where the 400 million went. And I think it evolves over time through that. But I'll let Brent touch on really.
Yeah.
Don't
It
assume
really
the insurance payout, but in a normal scenario.
it's it just really highlights the risk associated in what we do. And it's all on, like, you're calculating probabilities. Offshore, oil and gas development is a long-term thing. Like, you're spending a lot of money for a long time before you can even get production, right? That's why oftentimes you see, 400 million is the number, and I don't know if that's the actual, number, but oftentimes you've got joint ventures between companies. You rarely see, unless they're one of the majors, somebody who's floating 100% of the cost of drilling an offshore, putting an offshore play together, because it takes so long to get your return, and it's so capital intensive and expensive. You got to have deep pockets. So they could take 400 million and put this thing together and drill it, but then to drill the secondaries or to test the full parameters of the field, well, you got to come up with another 400 million to drill another one that's going to take 4 or 5 years to come into production, right? So you got to have deep pockets. In our industry, and in the time that the episode is kind of said, or this show is said, it's like the concept is, oh, we're entering into the Permian. Yeah, that's this big old thing, but it's still like, they're still finding these things, and it's really exciting. So it's really a decision. Hey, I'm in a bad spot. I got $400 million in my pocket somehow. Where am I going to apply that? And it's a cost benefit analysis. It's all risk. Am I going to reinvest this money here where I'm on the front end of a big deal where I can produce these things and make a ton of money, and B, maybe I can flip them and make even more, once I've established the field. So it's decisions. This is a risky business. It's wildcatting. Maybe he knew something about that well, like why it actually blew, and knew that, hey, this was worth reinvesting here because I've got a better chance of making money, and I'll just fight it out in court and take my licks. Right. It's very much a risk analysis is what I kind of gathered from it. It all kind of started to come together like, oh yeah, it was snaky. And yeah, people do unethical things all the time if it's a difference in making money or not. I mean, that's just the reality of business. We've seen it. We've dealt with it, Hell, I've dealt with some Monties before. The assholes still owe me some money. But I'm not gonna name names. I signed some letters that I wouldn't disparage them, but well, that goes.
Well, that actually segues nicely into my next question, because they're trying to play this decision whether, to drill or to litigate it in court. If you were a part of this team, or what would you do? Would you decide, hey, we'll stick to our word and do the right thing and we'll drill this well? Or would you think it's a smarter play to try and litigate it in court and let your attorneys, try and win this for you?
What would you do, Pat?
I'm going to lean on my attorneys. That's what the attorneys are there for. I think, Cammy was put in a bad spot out the gate. She didn't know. She's not privy to the industry. She's a headhunter. She's bullish. She's going to do what she thinks is necessary, whether that makes sense or not. But I think at that point, you take the most risk adverse route as possible with something that carries that much. Let them fight out in court. Listen to the people who know what they're doing. Listen to the president of your company. Listen to the people that have been in the field doing it for 20 to 40 years. But ultimately, it is Hollywood. And whether that 10% hit rate is a successful hit rate or not, no, I think you go and fight out in court. Ultimately, on the back end, you look back, the 400 million should have been allocated appropriately. Monty probably had a game plan, what he thought he was going to do with it. He was going to be able to recoup the dollars within the work overplay that he was investing it in, but that's never surefire either. So,
yeah, you see people robbing Peter to pay Paul all the time, right? Yeah. And at a corporate level, because it's a risky thing. You're rolling the dice, and man, you see people hit it big, and they're wealthy beyond their dreams. But you also see a lot of people that are out of this business or been bankrupt 3 times, and they're still doing it for the thrill. It's kind of in business, and especially in oil and gas business, like you can say your prayers in the morning and at night and have a way that you think you would do it. Hey, I'm going to do the right thing. What would Jesus do? But then when it boils down to it, you've got a lot of factors at play, and you have to, when running a business at that level, there's a lot at risk, employees, people, all the things. So you have to make an informed decision. You have to analyze all the expertise within your organization and do what you think's right and go with your gut a little bit. It's just the nature of it. It's very circumstantial. And one of the takeaways I got from that is that sometimes there's not a win-win, right? It's how can I minimize my losses? How can I work my way through this and try to stay a company 5 years from now?
Just do the right thing. Yeah.
I mean, generally you can, if you're in a service business, do the right thing, right? Because that sticks to you. At a company level, when you're deciding, oh man, I took this hit, I've got this opportunity, this could be huge for us. Like, it's a different thing, I think, that some of these companies have to make. And landmen sometimes are involved in that, and sometimes we're just along for the ride and doing what they tell us to do.
Starting to see why Monty had a heart attack in his early 50s.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Pretty stressful. Another question on this kind of this 400 million thing is, how real is the show's portrayal of a decision of this scale and how fast they're going with it? Would a $400 million offshore decision really move this fast, or is this something that would be slowed down by regulators in real life? I imagine that when you're drilling offshore, there's tons of regulations, and they don't seem to have touched on that at all.
Yeah, they skipped the whole part about there was a blowout under the ocean. They have to have time to let the movie be made about it. Somebody's gonna be tarred, feathered, in Washington. Yeah, I think I mentioned it earlier. Decisions aren't made that quickly, in the offshore world. And it's the first we've even heard of them being an offshore company. Everything that MTEX was doing was F-250s and in the Permian.
Right.
And now all of a sudden they're offshore, and you see that with companies. There has been a pivot, right? You think about some companies that operate in the Permian today, big names that we see. 20 years ago, or 30 years ago, they were offshore, international companies. And some of them still are holding on to that, but you started to see outside of the super majors, like this shift between, all right, I'm going to be a U.S. onshore, E&P company. And then there's others that are just strictly offshore, right? It's like all their eggs are in that basket, and it's hard to play both. So kind of see that, but I don't see those decisions being made that quickly.
Yeah, and I just don't understand timeline. I mean, if you're looking at, actually getting that offshore rig up and running, I don't even know the timeline to get something of that size.
You got to have a drill ship out there.
Yeah, I mean, that's where I'm looking. So they want weekly progress reports. All this is, you start to enter like this continuous drilling, right? Like what is defining efforts? What is, how are we defining drilling at that point? And so I'll be curious in the next episode how quickly that they gear up the actual rig, assuming that's the route they're going to go at this point. Because that'll definitely be dramatized significantly. If it's like a week and they're actually punching a hole in the ground, it'll be pretty comical.
I can't wait to see how Wolverine, the geologist, how he's gonna figure out where that gas is. I need a Wolverine in my company. Dude, that guy, this guy with no hair. I really appreciated that. I mean, this guy had everything going on. He's got a British accent, like whatever that
Right
is.
there with you.
Australian.
Australia's an Aussie with a goddamn Wolverine haircut. He bagged the good looking attorney that's a pit viper. I mean, goodness
Yeah.
gracious.
On location.
Yeah. I know I couldn't get my wife to, we
Oh
had
my
to stay in the
gosh.
Elegante Hotel as a landman in Beaumont for about 2 months. And the only 2 months of free breakfast was like, my wife was like, get me out of here. I need a house. So I
I
wonder how
also
long she's going to live in the trailer with him out there
You
on
don't think
location.
Sue would do coffee over the campfire every morning?
Goose ain't hanging out, walking barefoot on location, drinking coffee. And,
I also thought it was funny just how quiet that setting was. They wake up on that.
Yeah.
There's nobody there. It's just the two
Calm,
of
cool,
them.
collected. Yeah.
Yeah.
the
Peaceful.
reality is there's a damn saltwater truck banging through there,
Yeah.
at 5 a.m. It smells like generator,
Yeah.
diesel generator and everything. That's the reality, but I thought that was pretty funny.
It will be interesting to see, Patrick, as you said, I'm assuming next episode there'll be some kind of offshore shot, and I guess the
Oh, yeah.
show went in that direction because that's a much more exciting shot than sitting in the, Tarrant County Courthouse going over, with the insurance
Oh,
company.
of course. Yeah.
Um,
Yeah,
speaking of, oh, go ahead, Brent.
no, they'll set it in motion, but I mean, people don't unless you've been in the Gulf of Mexico. I've been out there fishing. I never worked on a rig. I have a family and things. Being from Louisiana, a lot of people in Louisiana in the business, were involved or got started. Businesses got started in offshore drilling and in production and all the things associated with like everything that happens onshore that you just drive to. Out there, you take a helicopter or you go on a boat,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and you may be 20 miles offshore, 2 miles offshore, or 100, right? So everything's proportionate. So just the cost and the time is exponential. My grandfather has a boat named after him. He was in the offshore oil and gas business out of Morgan City, Louisiana, and he had a crew boat. He worked for Tidewater Marine, and that's all they did. They sent ships all over the world to service production rigs and drilling rigs, and they're hauling pipe and they're hauling whatever. It's just basically taxis, like hotshot drivers on shore.
Yeah.
Everything happens in a 100-foot vessel, right? So it's just a long. There's just so much involved in it that.
Brent, I loved your analogy earlier. Whenever you look at it, it's, you see the map that the geologist holds up and you're looking at it and, the scale of the map, it's like, man, this looks like a big pocket. But you look how big the Haynesville Shale is as a prime example, how much gas is actually there. Then you go and look at, the entirety of the Gulf. Finding the Haynesville, when you put the Haynesville in the Gulf of America, you put the Haynesville out there, it's you're finding a needle in a haystack, on land.
100%.
It's a massive pocket right there. You get out in the Gulf, I mean, it's a needle in a haystack. So I think it's a really good analogy.
And that's why oil and gas, offshore oil and gas leases, Chad, are big, very, very big, and royalties are typically lower because of that investment, right? The capital that it takes to develop an offshore program is just exponentially different. So, the big leases, big blocks that you get in an offshore, oil and gas sale. And then you're shooting seismic off of a boat, laying lines, 600 feet under the water. There's just, that they kind of go through that, and that's why Wolverine in there was like, no, I need to look at the geology. I need to look at seismic. I need to look at this and that. Well, that's what he's referring to. Before that initial well was drilled, and maybe some of those other wells were drilled in the area that they referred to in the episode.
Mhm.
Somebody had to look at that, and somebody had to pay for that and fund it and analyze it and get their hands on it. And even if MTEX didn't have access to it, they have to pay for access to it.
Right.
So there's
Right.
deals to negotiate access for purchase of seismic and all the 3D and stuff. So kind of an interesting thing. We'll see if they dive into it. Maybe Tommy will be out there fighting pirates instead of cartels.
And I thought it was neat too how he touched on, structurally what can happen during a blowout like that, because I think they're really, and they probably will, but they haven't really acknowledged that was actually what happened at the well.
Right.
In full detail. And I think the geologist brings up, he's like, we don't know what it looks like. You don't know if, excuse my lack of geological terminology, but did it capsize? Was the, what happened to the actual formation through that blowout? And so, that really highlights the risk behind we're going to go and pop it in there. Now, if that's part of the 10% or if that's lower than 10% at that point. But I thought that was interesting. And I do wish they'd touch on that more because it's like Brent said, I mean, the factors that have to go in the money that's spent the seismic, it ain't just popping a hole in the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
Hopefully get lucky on 400 million.
I thought it was interesting that they were kind of like, we think it was not the hurricane, but it was a blowout, and we used the hurricane as coverage to get that insurance payout, and don't want that coming out.
Here's we want to talk about the difference between reality and drama. Insurance company would have never paid that. Like we have to have E&O insurance in our business as landmen. And the fact is, if you've ever, well, just think of it this way: if you've ever had to file a claim for insurance, if you've been caught up in a hurricane or a hailstorm or whatever, or a flood, like a lot of people in Houston did, the insurance company is in business to not pay out claims. They would have never gotten to the point where they'd have paid that out. In reality, there was no payout. No, you screwed this thing up and had a blowout because you were trying to go deeper with your well, and that's what happened. And now you've damaged the formation or whatever the case might be, which is the same thing that happens in onshore in the work that we do. Is like, man, you see it all the time. Oh, we're drilling a well and we pulled it too hard and it caved in, or structurally we had affected the formation. So it's not just a repeatable thing. Same concept applies, but insurance would have never paid $400 million out of pocket. But I don't know, man. Monty had some dirt on somebody.
Yeah, exactly. Because I say not only to pay the 400 million, but to pay it directly to him as well.
Right.
So another thing that we kind of see here is Tommy. He was the landman. Now he's been promoted to president, and he's delegating more stuff to Cooper now that they've bought his wells and everything. He just can't do it all. So what actually changes day to day when a landman moves into more of the executive leadership kind of role versus the day-to-day operations role?
You still got problems. They're just different. You're dealing with other people's problems. And I guess what I can say is you become less of a landman every day. It feels like, you're not in there in the weeds doing, you just get to hear cool stories from, your guys. Like I get to hear Pat stories. And I'm like, oh man, I remember going through something like that, 16 years ago. And I can share that. And it's like, but your focus is different. It's a learning curve, to be honest. And there's a lot of really good business people in our industry that started as landmen. And I think one of the reasons they can be successful is because of that people aspect of it. Like you have to be able to read a room, read people, establish relationships, build trust, and your word means something over time. And especially in the land business, as people, elevate and throughout opportunities presented to them and time, kind of take different steps and work in different areas, they gain knowledge and expertise in different parts of the business. And before you know it, they have got a good grasp on what it really takes to get things done. And they've got counterparts and peers. You see in some of the episodes where they're all coming together and you're doing these networking things. Well, that room works and deals get made in those rooms because of those relationships. And so depending on, what role you're working into, you can still apply that and you're still doing deals. It's just different. And if you're running a company, it's a whole different thing because you're concerned with all the other things and you really start to understand how big this industry is.
Right.
So definitely a transition. I can relate a little bit to Tommy.
Yeah, it's a very social industry, and being a landman, you got to be a social person. So it makes sense that that's kind of a natural progression for a land.
I'll say that the engineers have pretty much taken all that over, though. It's rare when we see one of our landmen getting up there and like, oh man, he made it. Engineers run us all out. They feel like they're smarter and they control all the purse strings generally. So landman boys, we don't get our respect anymore.
Well, maybe we'll see a change in that. Maybe some more landmen will start rising the ranks again.
Yeah, fact is, it all starts with landman. I'll die on that hill.
There you go. So another interesting thing we see in episode 8, the royalty backed borrowing. So Cammie's going to pledge her royalties, I guess, as the collateral for this loan. Can you walk through kind of how these deals are structured and why they change the risk for both the operator and the royalty owners?
What you take, Pat?
Um, in terms of dealing with the cartel or just in general speaking
I
to
would
He's not
say
the cartel. I'm
more
just an
so in
investor.
general. Cartel's
Just
a
an
bit of a
investor.
wild card.
no, generally speaking, I mean, all she's trying to do is find a partner just to, reduce some of the risk associated and any of the costs associated as well. So it's typically, what you would see standardly is either a JV that would be tied to this rather than kind of an under the hand, buddy deal. You'd see some type of JV, JEA that's associated with it as well. Or otherwise, a JOA that's presented to all parties that are associated with the well. And this is more so speaking to any actual inland drilling. But as to the offshore, I mean, that's all she's trying to do is just reduce her risk and reduce the cost. And obviously, just finding the $400 million. They're broke. They don't have money to do it. And so, who are we going to find? And ultimately, going and giving royalties attached to it, I don't think that was the wisest move you could have done there. But also, it's, what is your position at that point? She's not in a position to negotiate. And, I forget what's his name, the cartel leader.
Galino.
Yeah, Galeno, and he presents a great point. He's like, you're not going to get any rates better than this. So it's either you can give up your royalties, you can get a lower rate and recoup your dollars quicker, or you can go in some of these other financial institutions, which ultimately boils down further. What are they trying to hide? They're trying to keep the books closed because they made an unethical decision, and their tails between their legs, and they've got to figure it out. And that's why they're working with a criminal at this point. But
Yeah.
all in all, that's what you're trying to do there. You're really just trying to reduce the risk associated with the cost, but it's got to make financial sense. I don't think you ever just leverage and give up royalties just to give up royalties. It's not a good business decision, but she wasn't in a position to make good business decisions. So
Yeah, she wasn't in a good position, and she didn't have the expertise. The fact is, this is a dramatized thing, right? It's exciting when your banker, your source of your money, whether it's your private equity or your banker, is a cartel guy. So that's exciting. But it kind of runs true. It takes capital, and it takes a lot of capital to do what we do in this business, right? And not many people, especially folks that are drilling, new to the industry, or they're trying to make a name for themselves, build a company, they're a small team that's backed or whatever, have, a $40 million or $30 million for a drilling program. So you're selling your soul and you're taking some risk, right, to get access to that capital. And I can promise you right now, private equity is out for private equity. And there's a lot of deals that have been made by groups that, they just like, hey, we got to get started. We're a stand-up group. We're a geologist, engineer, and a landman, and we don't have $12 million for this program. Who's got it? And it's at that point, it's Shark Tank. It's like, all right, I need money. I've got expertise and know-how, but I need money. And what deal am I willing to make?
Yeah.
And that's why, the capital side of our business is a whole different side of the business, right? That's a whole different thing that, field landmen have no perspective. And even a lot of company people have no perspective of like what it takes. What's the cost of that capital? And what risk are you taking as a company? And that's why, when Cammie was negotiating and Tommy's like, Cammie, this is a bad deal. We need to negotiate. And she's like, no, I need the money. And she sees the easy money. And she's kind of been wooed by this guy by, cocktails with the wife and all that. And people get preyed on in this business. They really do. You see it all the time, especially on landmen. They're part of some an investment group or whatever, and they do this deal, and man, they think it's going to be great, and they're going to make a fortune. And when it all boils down to it, people are going to get a return on their investment, or they're going to cut their losses. To kind of bring it full circle from the money side of things, and people get caught up in it. And experience means something at that side of the business, like what's a good deal and what's a bad deal. Shit, who's to know until you've done it, or maybe you're really that kind of analytical person and you've been through it enough, like Tommy has. Tommy knows what's a good deal and what's a bad deal.
Mm-hmm.
Cammie ultimately makes the decisions. She says, I'm taking this deal. This is what we're doing. Now Tommy's left with the pieces. He's got to make it work or finagle some things around. And landmen get put in that position a lot of times. And we get to see it because we work on so many different projects as a broker. different circumstances. I mean, we're working for, the big majors and then small startups all at the same time, and they all have different circumstances. Um, so it's you get to see both sides of the fence for
Yeah.
sure.
What'll be interesting too is how her demeanor changes. I think right now she thinks she still holds the cards.
Yeah.
Just like you see with any private equity backing, what happens? You're working for the bank. The bank tells you to show up on Christmas Eve, you show up on Christmas Eve. You're a partner. She
Yeah.
doesn't realize that right now, I don't think, and that'll be a good come to Jesus for her because she's ultimately working for him now. She's
Hmm.
for the cartel, which is, I mean, all of Tommy's main concern.
She is,
Yeah.
and Tommy's like the landman, just like, I don't know, I don't get to make the decisions. Apparently, I'm just trying to make this work,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and, that's what you do see a lot in the business.
And Andy Garcia's character plays that wolf in sheep's clothing so well. He's basically telling Tommy, yeah, we kind of hope that it all fails so we can take the company and everything. And he says it in such a calm and like, composed way. He's like, yeah, if that happens, it's what's going to happen anyway. So it's just let's see how it goes. And
Chestnut checkers.
yeah. And he tells Tommy, he's like, would you do it any differently? And you see that realization. Tommy's just like, no, like you got us. Like, you
Yeah.
got us. Like, yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, as much as I tried to stop it, this is happening now.
Now it all falls on Wolverine to
Yeah,
figure it
come and
out.
save the day. But it kind of to that point where the Andy Garcia Galino, he's kind of it seems like he's kind of hoping the company does fail. And I don't think they really went into that too much. So if you could kind of just explain like what would happen in a situation like that, so they don't find anything and now they can't pay with royalties. Are they're basically putting the company as collateral at this point?
Yeah, I think Tommy touched on it. I mean, company goes under, Chapter 11, and you see that, right? A lot of companies file for bankruptcy when things aren't stable, right? Or you put all your chips in one thing and it doesn't pan out like you thought it was. Um, yeah, ultimately file Chapter 11 and stuff assets get sold at fire sale. Maybe that's what, since he's a lender, this is the way he's looking to back into all of M Texas,
Yeah.
assets,
Yeah.
right? at fire sale prices. Like he's backed them in a corner where it's a low probability that they can actually dig out of this. And the evil plot, the scheme will be that, oh, now I'm running a cartel. You're interfering with my cartel business, which is really my moneymaker. I'm going to bankrupt you and own all your assets,
Yeah.
Mhm.
and I'll do what I want. So it's like, who knows? This is drama. I just get all excited because it's not a run sheet. So I'm just excited to see
Yeah.
something.
Well, I feel like, one way or another they're gonna pull it out, but
Of course.
they've got their backs to the wall now.
Yeah.
So kind of a last thing before I got a couple fun questions towards the end, but uh last thing before we close it out. For each of you, if you were running MTEX at this point in the storyline, what alternative paths would you consider? And does that mean maybe you farm it out, or you're hedging against it, or are you trying to spin the offshore asset entirely? What would your line of thought be on that?
If I were in Cammy's shoes, knowing as little as I know, one, I would delegate everything over to Tommy. Tommy would make every business decision. I would just hold the money. I would hold all the cards. You tell me what to do, I'm doing it. But at that point in time, I mean, and Tommy even he reiterates it over, through season one, through season two, is it's what's the ultimate game here? Unless you're just hungry and you're a gambler, you get in and you get out as quick as possible. And I think the writing's on the wall for her. I mean, it just gets worse and worse and worse, and now you're in a position where you're stuck with the cartel and just poor decision after poor decision. Which again, it's Hollywood. That's the whole point. It's going to entertain the audience. They're not going to go, I think, like you mentioned, go highlight us in the courthouse over in Fort Worth.
Yeah.
It's going to be drawn out. But if I'm in her shoes, I'm probably just getting everything liquid at that point, flipping it, selling it. Not going to be my problem anymore. Walk away from it and be done. And if you want to kick it off and reinvest into another venture, go reinvest, pull the people over, whether it's Tommy, whoever it may be, start up your own crew backed by, whether the young and upcoming is Cooper, whoever it may be there. But I'm probably going to take the money that I know that I have, deal with everything that's happened, and then just walk away and try to keep it as clean as possible. I would not be drilling that offshore well.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, yeah, I wouldn't either. I would maybe buy a boat and go fish off the offshore
Yeah.
well that's down there, something like that. Um, but it seems like they're kind of going down a path at the end of the episode 8. Tommy goes and brings the crew and says, "All right, the kid went 6 for 6. Let's go see if we can make this thing happen. Now we're involved in it. We bought these." And that actually, as far as kind of how you see that play out, is pretty realistic. It takes somebody willing to take some risk to go find this new thing, and they you drill 6 wells and, oh crap, this concept works. Then you need that influx of capital. It's Shark Tank all over again, right? I've got a thing, I think it works. I don't have the capital to do it, right? And so you either make a bad financing decision or you get gobbled up and you JV with someone who has the capital to do it. So I don't know. Maybe Tommy and them will, hit it big and figure it all out. With this new area further north, and be able to work their way out of it. And ultimately, it sounded like there were some tones that he's going to do what he needs to do to protect the business anyway,
Yeah.
and beg for forgiveness. He either gets fired or he makes it and figures it out and keeps them from pouring money into the ocean, literally.
Right.
So that probably rings true. These are decisions that a lot of times landmen aren't involved in, right? We don't understand. I mean, drilling wells and doing all the stuff that we do and producing is kind of what this show is all about. Like there's so much to it. There's so much involved in it that decisions are made at so many levels based on skill set and experience. And you don't take an engineer or a geologist and have them do land work, and landmen don't do engineering and geology. And some of these people don't run companies, right? And we're not CFOs, and that's why you see landmen tend to get injected into a lot of different parts of these businesses so that they can share some of that land perspective and kind of analyze things from a land perspective and advise like they did with Cammy.
Yeah.
Here's the circumstance, make a decision. Money, my money person, make a decision. Tell me what you're willing to do. And um, hell, I don't know if I can do anything different. Really, it sounds like Tommy's doing what the best. He's playing the cards the best he can. And he's probably rolling like on roulette, a little bit and risking it. Maybe he'll make it.
Yeah, I think out of all the people, I would trust him the most to make these
Yeah.
decisions. I mean, he's steered them right so far. Um,
He's done something.
so what these questions are for both of you. So if you were watching the show with someone who's never worked in oil and gas or has very, very little experience in oil and gas, what's the one thing that you'd want to stop, hey, let me explain this to you because this is either just completely egregious or this is pretty technical. What's the one thing so far that you've seen where you'd want to stop and make sure to explain to somebody?
I think with the big thing that draws to me, like Tommy's role, he's not just a landman, really. And I've told my wife, my dad's a landman as well, but my wife and I watch it, I'm explaining to her like he's a jack of all trades. What he does here, the lease negotiation, which they don't really touch on a whole lot, which I guess bridges into him becoming a president, but he's more of a production foreman than anything. I mean, he's out there, he's actually running the crews on the ground, he's actually checking the wells, he's checking the pressure, he's doing all. Landman don't do that. We're going to go meet with the landowners that live nearby, or that we have the leases underneath, but he's more so an engineer production superintendent than he is, I would say, a landman, even in early episodes. And so that's one thing that I've tried to explain to my wife, like, and she knows what I do, but
Yeah.
that's not the reality. If I'm going out, when I was doing surface work out in the Haynesville, I was going and visiting the landowners. I'd go see the locations, but I'm not going on site and I'm not putting the hard hat on unless I get out of my truck. So,
Yeah.
Yeah. He's probably more, they talk about we're the largest independent producer in the Permian and all that. And Tommy's kind of a blend of 6 or 7 different things.
Yeah.
Where you might see that as someone like Tommy, where he would be doing some of that, is like your 3-person shop,
yeah.
right? Your old school conventional type deal where, some guys put some geologist and engineer and a landman, have an idea and they want to go drill this well. Maybe the landman's also out there talking to the guy. It's like building your own house, like subcontracting your own house. You're just dealing with vendors, right? You got a concept, an idea, and an agreement and rights to do it, and you're just putting it together and making it happen. That's when you'd kind of see a guy like Tommy also being a business owner, a president, the job foreman, the landman, the surface landman, the guy negotiating for money. you see that in maybe a small shop, somebody wearing all those hats. It takes a lot of experience to be able to get to that point. Who knows where Tommy started? He might have started 25 years ago. Was he probably 60 in this show?
Yeah.
25 years ago, he might have just been a circus landman, and then opportunities, and he and his buddy, his best friend, Monty took some risk, got some money, and they just build. The next thing you know, you're doing all these things. That's more realist. That's kind of like the reality is you don't just end up there. You're finding a way, and
Ever just gone and
circumstance
hung out
brings
at
you
the
there.
band camps, Brent, with all the
No,
roughnecks?
I didn't get the man camps. No, the Elegante is about as close as I got. You know,
Yeah. So you wouldn't be seeing a guy like Tommy at the largest independent producer company, right?
they don't even let us. No, they don't even let us in that meeting. We're down. We're out there hanging out. We will be at the bar. At some
Yeah.
point in time. Most landmen will be there. Company people think we're there at 3. It's really like 4:30 when we get there.
What so if you could kind of direct the show, what's something you'd like to see happen in the show that maybe they haven't touched on yet? Maybe whether it's purely for sensational reasons or to give more credibility to the industry. What's something that'd be kind of on your wish list for the show to feature?
Brent,
We
I'll
talk
let
about this.
you. Yeah.
Yeah, talk about this all the time. I mean, the landmen in the sense of what we do, it's not entertaining to talk about building a run sheet or, clearing a well for, clearing a well for drilling, right? Dealing with attorneys, dealing with title opinions and all that. I mean, the business is so segmented now with the shale plays, like everybody has a job. That's not sexy and not cool. But as Cooper, is this the son? The son's name Cooper,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
What I would have liked to have seen is, when he's putting his thing together, they kind of glossed over like he made a couple deals and this, that, and the other. Like I would have liked to have seen that was a great opportunity to really maybe highlight more on, hey man, all right, this is what it would take to put those leases together. And maybe just inject a little bit of, I'd have done a cameo. Dudley Land would have done a cameo on, like
Yeah.
actually show somebody in the courthouse pulling some records and just give us a little, something, you
Yeah.
know. Um, that's what I'd like to see. Maybe at some point in time they'll do something like that. Just some little hints for us landmen to know. Oh man, like they listened to somebody and
Yeah.
Yeah.
threw us a bone.
Maybe cut 2 minutes from the retirement home scene to give a
Yeah.
little bit of a courthouse title research scene, right?
Right.
Yeah, or negotiating some deal, some landman deals, and I
Yeah,
don't know.
landman deals, and I think even just like aside from just being landman, because it's the industry as a whole, show all the multiple facets that are involved. Like it's not just MTEX company A does this, and this, and then you can look at it from our perspective. And to Brent's point, like we're companies are subbing out work. They're finding groups like Dudley Land Company, even on the drilling and operations side. Like you don't have MTEX isn't typically, at least in my experience working in house, Comstock Resources didn't have a completions department that had all the equipment. What are you doing? You're subbing that out to a crew, to whoever it may be, and some of these different certain rigs that are running, all that. Just highlight more that there's more involved than just company A. There's this many people that have to get to Z. I think that would be pretty interesting. But not showing the Pattersons of the world, Halliburton's, any of that, really. I mean, it seems like it's all kind of just in-house. Everything's MTEX.
What I want Tommy to do is have some. I want him to have some old grungy field landman that he came up with that still doing some old nasty field landman work like we do. And Tommy goes back to his old buddies from where he got started in the landman business before he became a president of MTech.
That's what I was hoping was going to be his dad. When Sam Elliott came
Oh,
on,
I was like,
saw
oh,
he
he's a
was coming in,
crusty
I was
old
hoping his
landman.
dad was like a legit. I mean, he was just an offshore guy, roughneck. That's all he did, and lived out there. I was hoping that was the case.
Dude, I worked with like 6 dozen of his dads, Sam Elliott's. Like, I mean, that's what I want. That's what I want to see. I wanted the guys divorced 3, 4 times, lived in a hotel and, you know, Abilene for 14 months, of his life. That's what I want. Maybe that'll happen. Maybe they'll give us a little shot to
That's right.
throw a bone to the landmen of the world. I keep sending them our Dudley Landman hats. I got a connection with somebody on the cruise, so they get landman hats pretty regularly. maybe they'll get us in there one day.
Yeah, season three, Paramount, if you're listening, we got tons of ideas for you. Um, okay, so last question before we wrap up. Not necessarily about the show, but just for you guys. If you weren't working as a landman, what would you be doing?
Probably still guiding hunts. I don't know.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's a great one.
No, probably. I mean, I don't know. I had some opportunity with my uncle to go, and he's a big sugarcane farmer down in South Louisiana. I entertained that, and that was kind of during that phase of like, what do I want to do? And my only experience, again, in-house deal was great. I mean, I show up and you know what you're going to make. I'm just probably a little too ADD for that at times. And so being able to kind of move, jump around, go and see people, do all that, that was kind of a phase that I was in. I think I told Brent that, before I left Comstock is like, do I want to go? And I could move to Lafayette, go help my uncle farm down there, do his crawfish, do his sugar cane. And then really, I mean, Dudley was probably my last shot. I mean, I went to tech, I got my PLM degree and all that, and it wasn't doing it for me, but seeing this side of it, I really loved it. I mean, it's reinvigorated my energy. It's made me want to show up every day, love the people that I get to work with my family every day. So it's awesome.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Brent, what
It
about
depends
you?
on if it's 20 years ago or today. If I'm not going to be a landman tomorrow, what would I be? It'd be different. But I think for me, I've probably been involved something to do with land, less office time, more, ranch management, farm management, at something in the agro space, right? Dealing with people and that's probably what I would do. Maybe still on the service side. I think I tend to be just a service oriented person. I think you have to be. There's a lot of different things that lead you to career paths, but
Right.
there's a lot of service industry out there, whether it's oil and gas or agribusiness or ranch management or whatever. I've probably done something like that.
Yeah. Still somewhat adjacent, right? Still doing some kind of land and getting out there.
Yeah, maybe. God, I don't know if I'd be a realtor. Not no no not knocking the realtors. It's just it's another up and down business.
Yeah.
It's cyclical. I
Yeah.
tell you, every landman that gets to the point where they start to have children, teenage children, you start to think, all right, well, am I going to try to help my kid be a landman? And it's always like a roll of the dice because you know how difficult this business is. And
You're going to learn
but
people, and you're going to learn how to work on a computer and code and do all the things that are going to be
yeah,
necessary
I mean,
that
the
are
main
already
thing is don't be an
necessary.
asshole. Like,
Yeah.
also don't be an asshole. Like, that's pretty important
That's a good rule for just for life.
in general. In
Yeah.
general.
Well,
Yeah.
I
was
got
it
one
okay?
question. I got
Yeah.
one question for y'all,
Yeah.
and we'll end it with this, if
Okay.
y'all are okay with that.
Go for it.
Waffles or omelets?
Uh,
What day of the week?
I love a waffle, but I feel like an omelet doesn't really get old. Like a waffle, I can eat an omelet, several times a week. I'm only gonna eat a waffle once a week.
I think Tommy liked the omelet, and I'm going with omelets too.
Yeah, here's my take. There's some variety with an omelet. I can do no cheese. I can do sausage, cheese, bacon, whatever I want to do. Waffle's a waffle. Give me
Right.
give me savory all day.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I'd go with omelet.
All right, okay, we're all
Not,
omelet then.
not in the sense that Tommy, but you know, just a buffet kind of thing. Yeah. Omelet.
Oh
Uh,
man.
well, good deal. Well, hey, we got Nape right around the corner. Will we see you guys at Nape?
We'll be there.
Oh yeah, we'll be there. We've got our
Yes.
God. I think it's like our, I don't know, 30 something year anniversary of our Dudley party.
There
So
you go.
Dudley's been doing their Nate party for a long, long time. So we're keeping that going. We'll be there and we'll be bouncing around town and
Oh yeah.
having our little landman party. And it's a great time of the year to see everybody. It's really exciting and you really get a good feel for the feel for the industry at Nape. People's attitude, mentality. You kind of start to get an idea of what the year might look like for you. So
Yeah,
we're excited. We'll see
we're
everybody there.
looking
Yeah.
forward to it. So if you're listening to this, come stop by the Dudley booth and see these guys and find out some more about what they have going on.
All
Well,
right.
with that, I think that wraps it up. So thanks for taking the time to join today. I know, like I told you guys earlier, after the holidays is a lot of catching up and real busy. So
Yeah.
I really appreciate you taking the time to come on and discuss the episode with us.
You bet. Yeah,
You
Chad, you made me
betcha.
watch about 8 hours worth of Landman and get caught up on Sunday.
I needed, yeah, I needed a reason to watch it. I mean, like, God, I guess I got to watch it. And then I was like, oh
Yeah.
crap, I got to watch 8 episodes real quick. But I watched 1 and 2, and then I skipped to 7 and 8. So I
Yeah.
got to follow back up or something.
Well, also asked you guys to do double duty and do cover 2 episodes. So appreciate you putting a little extra time for that.
Take that.
It worked out good. Thanks for having us, Chad.
Yeah.
Fun. Yeah, thank you, Chad.
Well, with that, that wraps up Landman Now, podcasting the profession. Thanks for listening, and a big thank you to Patrick and Brent for joining the show today. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure and subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes. You can also learn more about APL, our resources, and membership opportunities by visiting landman.org. Until next time, I'm Chad Smith, and this has been Landman Now, podcasting the profession.
Bye bye.
See you guys.
Thumbs up in there. All right.
There you
Thank
go.
you, Chad.
Bye.